Good morning, everyone. This is John with Gun.Deals. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the 6.5 Grendel cartridge as perhaps the best DMR cartridge for the AR-15 platform currently available. Now, while you're here, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe, as all of that is free and does help us out quite a bit. On top of that, go ahead and comment your favorite AR-15 caliber in the comments down below. Now, as of the time I'm recording this video, Hornady has announced their new 22 ARC caliber, and Sons of Liberty Gunworks has announced their new 6 Max caliber. So we are getting a few new calibers for the AR-15 platform. That might outperform this, but even so, the 6.5 Grendel is still a great cartridge. It's been around for a while. It is proven in the AR-15 with a few quirks here and there. Now, full disclosure on this build, this was actually a customer's build that he sent in for me to assemble and do some testing on, and with that testing, I have already taken it out to 1,000 yards and done a bunch of shooting with it, and I quite like it. It performs very, very well and matches the capabilities of the 6.5 Grendel. Now, getting into the basics of 6.5 Grendel, this is based off of the same parent case of the 7.62 by 39, which is the 220 Russian. Now, some of the positives of having the 220 Russian as a parent case is that the 220 Russian is a much thicker case than, say, 5.56, meaning that you get more powder in the case, even if you're using the same overall length. Unfortunately, what that means is you have to take the AR bolt and remove a lot of material from it to accept the thicker case. So while the advantage is you get more powder, you can sling heavier bullets faster, of course, the downside is you are going to suffer in long-term reliability, long-term durability, specifically on the bolts. Now, if we're to compare 6.5 Grendel to essentially its brother 7.62 by 39, 7.62 by 39 is a great general purpose round. Its main problem is that with those bigger 30 caliber slugs, it drops really, really fast. It's a fairly slow round, so out to distance, it's doable, but it's a little bit more difficult. The 6.5 Grendel obviously necks down the 7.62 down to 6.5, and you get a much longer, thinner bullet, usually launching a 123 grain projectile at a little bit faster than your standard 7.62 by 39, and with about double to triple the BC. BC being ballistic coefficient, which is essentially how efficiently it flies through the air. Now, while you can get very ballistically efficient 6.5mm projectiles, the main problem with the 6.5 Grendel is that you're not pushing very high velocities. Most of the time, depending on barrel length, you're going to be ending up somewhere between 2200 FPS and 2400 FPS, maybe a little bit higher with a super long barrel and a really hot hand load, but again, it's not a particularly speedy round, so when we compare it with some other projectiles, you will notice that it drops a little bit more. Right now, its biggest competitor is the newer 6mm arc, which is of course using a 6mm projectile, usually ranging between 103 and 108 grains with about the same case capacity, meaning that the 6 arc usually has somewhere between 100 and 200 extra FPS, again, depending on hand loads, barrel lengths, and a variety of other factors, but 6 arc is going to have a flatter trajectory with very, very similar, if not better, ballistic coefficient. 6 arc is a great round in concept and ballistically a little bit better than 6.5 Grendel, but its problems are that it has some teething issues with magazines and getting it to run properly in gas guns. You need to get it tuned very well, especially when you're shooting it suppressed, and factory ammunition is very limited for 6mm arc versus the wide variety of available loads on 6.5 Grendel, just because it's been around for a lot longer, has a lot more manufacturer support, and on top of that, 6.5 Grendel does retain a little bit more energy with the little bit heavier bullets, and it's also going to have a much wider variety of projectiles, meaning that for hunting applications, for terminal effects, the 6.5 Grendel, just by virtue of having better bullet selection, better manufacturer support, is probably a little bit better for that, for again, small to medium-sized game. Now, when taking 6.5 Grendel out to distance, say 1,000 yards or so, one of the most notable things that you need to take into consideration is going to be the drop. 6.5 Grendel, again, is not particularly fast to begin with, so when taking it out beyond 600 yards, all the way out to 1,000 yards, you're going to notice considerably more drop than other faster cartridges. Now, one very nice thing about the 6.5 Grendel bullets is even if they're not particularly fast and you do need to factor in quite a bit of drop at distance, because they're going to have very high BCs on the top end for 6.5 Grendel, wind is not that big of a consideration. If we're going to compare it against, say, 5.56 in the wind, even a nice 5.56 round, you're looking at about half the wind drift with the heavier, more ballistically efficient 6.5 Grendel loads than the faster but less efficient 5.56. Now in terms of recoil, 6.5 Grendel is a little bit more aggressive than 5.56, but it is going to be on par with 7.62 by 39 and 6mm arc. The biggest differences between those three rounds is going to come down to the individual setups and what round you're actually using. So recoil is very, very easy to control. If you're set up in a stable position, it is very easy to fire off rounds very accurately and quickly to get a lot of rounds downrange if you need to do so. And with a good muzzle brake and a setup with a decent amount of weight, you can virtually eliminate recoil. It's going to be much softer than something like 6.5 Creedmoor or 308, or really any full power round, as again, it's kind of in the mid-range in terms of power. And we've talked about this a little bit before, but 6.5 Grendel does have a little bit more energy than 6mm arc, so its terminal effect, which again is going to be very dependent on what specific bullet you're utilizing, at what speeds, distances, so on and so forth, but in general, its terminal effectiveness is very good. Now what that means is, when we put all that together, is that once you compensate for your drop, which is going to be higher than other faster bullets, you get a very consistent round that has very low recoil compared to other precision calibers, let's say, with very good terminal effects. Now, the ammo selection that I used exclusively for this video was Hornady Custom 123 grain SST, which is a combo precision / hunting load, and it shoots right at 1 MOA 5-round groups out of this setup. Now, getting into the setup briefly, this is based off of the Ballistic Advantage SPR profile barrel. This is a 18-inch rifle length barrel chambered in 6.5 Grendel. This is part of their premium series, so it is a 416R stainless steel finish. And again, it shoots this Hornady Custom right at 1 MOA, which is exactly what I need. And again, with this ammo and barrel combo, I took it out to 1,000 yards with very little issue. With my last 5 rounds, I was 4 for 5 at 1,000 yards, and so I'm pretty happy with that. Now, the optic of choice for this video, this is actually the new Vector Continental, so German glass, 1:10 by 28 first focal plane optic. This is using a EOTech style reticle. At 1x, you have this big outer horseshoe that kind of draws your eye to the center, and then as you zoom into 10x magnification, because again it is first focal plane, you get a very simple dot, horseshoe, and of course your mil drops. And for this video with the 1:10, I only took it out to about 650 yards, but I found that to be very easy to do, and if I wanted to stretch this 1:10 out further, it again would not be difficult. Now, the only other real component of note on this build is the Ballistic Engineering trigger. This is their enhanced trigger, which is tunable from 4 pounds all the way down to about 1.5. I currently have it set just above the minimum, so it's probably hovering right around 2 pounds or so. Incredibly light trigger, very, very short reset. For a match trigger, it is, again, fantastic for the application. But that's about all that I have for this video, guys. Let me know what you guys think of the build and 6.5 Grendel in the comments down below. And hopefully at some point in the future, I'll be able to check out the new 6 Max from Sons of Liberty Gunworks and the 22 Arc from Hornady. And hopefully we get a little bit more manufacturer support on both of those. So with all that out of the way, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. I will see you in the next one. Peace off.